Hello, my name is Sandy Adamitis, the social media director for the Page International Screenwriting Awards, and your host for the Writers Hangout, a podcast that celebrates the many stages of writing, from inspiration to the first draft, revising, getting a project made, and everything in between. We'll talk to the best and the brightest in the entertainment industry and create a space where you can hang out, learn from the pros, and have fun. Hey, writers, you are going to love today's episode because I interview screenwriter Matias Caruso, who lives in Argentina. Matias taught himself English and how to write screenplays. And after writing and working hard to develop his craft, he wrote an absolutely stunning script called Carnival that won the Page Awards Grand Prize in 2014. After his win, Carnival was optioned by a Page judge and he was signed by an agent. Matias continues to live in Argentina, and although he never moved to the United States, he's had a couple movies made, including Mayhem and Witch. Matias Caruso, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you for having me, Sandy. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are currently in Argentina.
That's right.
How is the weather there?
It should be summer here, but for some reason, today we're having a winter day.
Really? Raining?
Yeah. Not raining, but it's cold, like jacket cold, which is weird. Yeah, super weird.
In LA currently, we are jacket cold, which I know everybody across the United States laughs at us, but it is a little chilly here. So, and by the way, this just isn't random talk. I love talking about the weather. I don't know. It's just something weird about me. I love knowing what's going on with the weather. So, could you please give us some background and how you got into screenwriting? You started as a lawyer, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I went to law school. I got my degree and I started working in a law firm. And I kept that going for a few years until this is quite cliche, but I ended up being like a cubicle rat, trapped inside the office all day. It was super soul crushing. But I stayed there a bit because I didn't have anywhere to go, because I knew that law wasn't my calling.
What type of law was it?
Mostly commercial law, I think you call it. But you had to be a bit of a Swiss knife, because a partner will come in and throw a file over your desk, and you had to take care of that, whatever it was. I did a little bit of everything, but mostly commercial law. I always liked movies, but what changed everything was when, by accident, I discovered that screenwriting was a thing. I didn't know that movies were written first.
As a kid, you thought that maybe the actors were coming up with the lines?
Yeah, totally. Like I thought the director would say like, yeah, put that explosion over there. You say this thing, you do this other thing. I mean, here, sometimes people ask me what I do, and when I tell them, they don't know what screenwriting is.
Oh, that's so interesting.
It's not like writing novels or poetry, or it's not very well known. Some people do know, but others, like, they ask you that, and what is that? Like, do you write just the dialogue lines, or questions like that they don't know? Yeah, it's easy to get confused.
Yeah. So you were a lawyer and you kind of weren't fulfilled by the work.
Yeah. I was wearing the suit all day with the tie around my neck like a nest. What saved me was that I discovered that this was a career, screenwriting was a career, and for the first time in my life, there's something I wanted to do that I liked. And so I kept the job because I needed to pay the bills somehow.
Right.
But in the meantime, and I went into sponge mode, and I started reading books and listening to podcasts like this one, and reading scripts. I mean, I was on my commute to work, and from work, I was always reading a screenwriting book or listening to a screenwriting podcast. I mean,
and so you dived in.
I dived in. Basically, I was devoting like 90% of my free time into learning this. The thing is, like, my free time wasn't a lot because in the law firm I was working from sunrise to sunset, more or less. I think there in US you usually speak about the 9 to 5. Um,
Yes.
Here it was 9 to 7, and you factor in the trip to downtown and back, it was eight
Right.
to eight to eight. I didn't have much time, so I needed to do something in order to really dive in. And what I did was I quit the profession and I took a part-time job as a cashier at the restaurant. That was the night shift. I kept paying the bills with that, and during the day, I had all the day free in order to write.
And how did your family and friends and your coworkers feel? Were they all supportive? Did you get some lectures?
There were different reactions. My family, yes, they were supportive. Have in mind that it wasn't like I finished high school and I said I want to be an artist, because in that case they wouldn't have been so supportive.
Mm,
Um, because I mean it's a tough proposition. I mean, making a living in something art related, it's very very hard. But what happened is I did choose traditional career. I read all the books. I set for all the exams. I got the degree. I worked for it, and they noticed that I wasn't happy. It was tearing me apart. So when I quit, they weren't super happy that I stopped being a lawyer to be a cashier, but they were very understanding because I needed that change, and they knew it. They were supportive.
that's great. I'm really glad your family supported you. I mean, you were going to do it no matter what,
Yeah, I
but
had
it's
to,
so much better with support.
of course. And my coworkers, well, it was a little bit split. It depends what kind of coworker, because the senior lawyers couldn't possibly understand what was throwing my career away. There was
Yeah.
one that told me, "Yeah, I mean, you need to come back. You were a good lawyer to do this." Some of them thought I was crazy, and the younger lawyers and the paralegals were like, I was their suddenly I was their idol, because I was throwing the chain in the wind and rebelling against the system. Of course, they were younger and they were more open to bad examples. So
That's great.
they took it well. Yeah, they were very supportive. So when I started working in the restaurant, what really helped me was that I had a lot more free time in order to polish my craft,
Yeah.
to
Yes.
write more scripts, and very little by little, I started selling some things. At first, there were shorts, then features, and at what point I quit the restaurant and started working full time. But from the day I discovered that screenwriting was a career and I wanted that, to the day I actually started making a living at it, 11 years passed. So it was a very long journey. I sum it up very quickly, but it was 11 years.
I really admire your strength and fortitude. We have your talent from that. I read that you read bad reviews of your films so you can pinpoint which criticisms apply to the script to learn a few lessons and grow as a writer. Are you a superhuman being? That what a great way to approach your bad reviews. Have
I
you learned from bad reviews?
Yes, I wish I was a superhuman being, but yeah, it still hurts when you read a bad review of or any criticism of your work, because obviously you give your best and then you see that your best has flaws. I'm always open to feedback. I mean, even if there's a mean review online or something, I just ignore the jabs and get to the meat of it. And if I can learn something, I'm always open to take it.
Good.
It's not that I read all the bad reviews, but I mean, I read three, four, five, and when I start seeing a pattern that repeats, and I think I pinpointed the main problem, then I can stop. The thing is, it's very hard to be objective about your own work because you created it, and it's like trying to look at yourself in the mirror but without a mirror. So that's why I think that feedback is so important. I mean, in the script stage, I always ask for feedback. and it helps me a lot. And once a movie comes out, I'm also interested in hearing feedback from reviewers, from whoever.
Can you please tell us what happened with your Page Award winning script, Carnival?
It was optioned by a producer that I met through the contest. And this producer, he had feedback, he had notes. We did a lot of drafts. And when it was ready, he took it to the main agencies. These agencies started reading the script in order to match it with a director of the roster. And they also noticed that I had a manager at the time, but I didn't have an agent. So I got meetings with all the main agencies.
Great. You met with all the major agencies. What did you
Yeah,
look for? What did you look for when you wanted an agent? Was there certain things you were looking for?
that was a factor, but when you talk to an agent or a manager and you're considering signing with them, you're thinking of your career as a whole. I mean, that includes the current script, but you're also thinking on what they can do for you long term. I focus more on the bigger ones because they have more reach, they have
Mm-hmm.
more information about what jobs are floating around. But there's not much you can do. You need to feel them, how you jive on the call or on the Zoom. That's also important. How do you feel about the particular rep? The company is one thing, but the manager or agent that's going to rep you, it's another thing.
Now, if I find a rep, I stick with them for the rest of my career, correct?
No, I wish. He used to think exactly the same. Before having my first rep, it was my dream that I would find one and never let go, you know? But no, it's not like that. I mean, every rep writer I know, they are not with their first manager or first agent. They all have been shifting around quite a bit. I'm now on my fourth manager and on my second set of agents. And every now and then you find someone who you hear some veteran writer who met his manager like 20 years ago and they're still with them. It can happen, just like it can happen that someone married their high school sweetheart. But
Right.
it's the exception, not the rule.
I wanted to talk about Mayhem, your movie Mayhem. It's such a fun, wild ride. How did you come up with that idea? And what was the writing process like? Can you tell us about Mayhem?
Yeah, sure. I told you the background already that inspired it. I was a lawyer working full time. I hated my job. I hated my life. I wanted to write about that, but that was something that's important to me. But that's something that people wouldn't pay money to watch.
You wanted to talk about the politics of a workplace?
Exactly, the backstabbing and how does it feel to be trapped there and be miserable. But
Yeah.
that's something very personal and that it was important to me, but it wouldn't necessarily be something important to a wide audience.
Right.
It was in the back of my mind for some time, and until I figured out the sci-fi angle, so to speak. Um, it was this virus that makes people more violent, more susceptible to their basic instincts. So suddenly I had an idea in which I had everything that I was so passionate about. I have the office politics and this guy that was trapped in there. But I also have a virus that makes people violent, and I have action scenes, and I have suspense, and that was when I figured, okay, this could be a movie.
What
So
what a great idea to layer the virus over the office politics. You knew your strength. Did you have fun writing it? Because it sounds like a fun script to write.
yeah, I had a lot of fun. I picked things right from my experience. Obviously, in the movie, everything is exaggerated, but I had some fun picking some experiences from my own work. And yeah, and it's something pretty universal. I mean, um, if you talk to the director of the movie and you ask him why did you respond to that script, he has a very similar story. He was also trapped in some cubicle job, and when this script landed on his desk, he felt so identified with the situation. It's something that many people go through. That's the fun part. I mean, it was also fun creating all the virus and the rules and how does it work and the action scenes. But the core, I was very passionate about what the character was feeling. And I think that's why this was the first script that got me noticed. Because before this, I don't have anything. This is the script that got me my first contest win, even before page.
Mm-hmm.
It got me a honorable mention in another contest and my first manager.
Well, congratulations on that. And I think we can see it streaming in the United States. I think it's on Sling currently, or probably Amazon Prime. So
Yeah, I
go
think
watch it.
yeah, I think it's an Amazon Prime. I can't watch it from here because it's not available. It's in
Mhm.
Amazon, but not a subscription service, but the other one when you pay for each movie individually. I don't know.
Right. Right. Yeah. Hey, can you share the best screenwriting advice that you were given and the best screenwriting advice
Hmm.
you ever read?
Can't recall who told me. It's quite cliche, so I'm guessing the listeners of of the podcast already heard this, but yeah, I still think it's one of the best pieces of advice. Someone told me it's a marathon, not a sprint, which is a good mentality to have because it happened to me as well. I mean, sometimes as aspiring writers, you are very eager to get to that first break, that first thing, that first sale, or that first agent,
Mhm.
or whatever. And instead of thinking, okay, I'm gonna write this script in order to sell it or in order to get a manager, what you should be thinking is, I'm gonna devote 5 years of my life in order to study and get better at a career that's one of the most difficult in the world. I think that's the right mentality. Not thinking about one script or your next script, but thinking as your career as a whole. I mean,
Yes.
be ready to accept that your first maybe 10 screenplays won't earn you any money, but they will earn you experience. I think that's the right mentality to have.
Oh, I really like that.
Yeah, if you have the right mentality, everything stems from that. All good habits fan out from that core principle. If you are very eager and too hurried to get to that first break, then you won't put in the necessary work in order to get better. And you have to like it because since it's just a long road. Yeah, that's the best I heard. And the best I read, I can't pinpoint one piece of
Yeah.
advice. I have one website to recommend. It's called wordplayer.com, and it's run by Terry Rossio, who's the screenwriter of Spider.
Oh, yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I'm going to put a link in our show notes.
Yeah, when I started out, it was there. So, and what they have is they have a columns section, and Terry Rossio writes many columns, and in each column he tackles one aspect of the craft and sometimes the business.
Yes.
It's a bit dated right now since the site is so old, but I still think that's one of the best things that an aspiring screenwriter can read.
Yes, I agree 100%. Terry was one of the first successful writers to kind of get out there and start rolling up his sleeves and giving back
Mm-hmm.
to the writing community.
Yeah, he did.
Is there anything that he said, or did you just want to point out the website for people to check?
Yeah, I mean, all the columns are great, but the ones he talks about the craft, they are very specific, and he tackles some specific issues that you don't see usually in screenwriting books. I mean, there are good screenwriting books out there that, at least that I liked, but they give you general guidelines, and
Yes.
Terry goes really specific.
Yes.
Like he has a column that talks about point of view, for example. He even does this analogy, like this metaphor of, he says that when you're writing a script, you have to imagine a parrot. This parrot has has a camera strapped under its belly. So when you writing a scene about your protagonist, the parrot is flying over there, shooting the scene with his cam. He calls the parrot cam. And when you catch away to another character that's not the protagonist, the parrot must fly over there to capture that scene. And what he says is that you need a parrot that's well rested, that you can have your parrot flying around all over the place. He's the first one that introduced me to the concept of the point of view restriction, that you have a protagonist and you make sure he's likable. And once you have that and your audience, your reader are rooting for your protagonist and they care about their goal, you need to stick with the protagonist. But if you introduce your protagonist and then you go around and spend time with other characters that have nothing to do, like the reader is gonna start thinking like, why am I seeing this? What does it have to do?
Yeah.
It's a temptation because if you can write scenes from everyone's point of view, it's easier to write the exposition, to explain the rules and everything. But you need to keep track that your reader cares about your protagonist. So that's why you need a parrot that's well rested and not flying around too much. But obviously, if you read the column, Terry explained it much better than me.
I really like that. And I think we found the title of the episode is to The Well-Rested Parrot. I like that.
The parrot episode.
Hey, any thoughts for screenwriters breaking into the business, especially those not living in LA? Do you have any final thoughts or anything you can share?
If you can move to LA and if you want to do it, I think it's an advantage, but it's not a requisite. I've been working full time as a writer for like 6-7 years maybe, and I can do it from outside LA, so it's not a requisite. I don't know if you want to write Marvel movies and Star Wars movies and be a super high end screenwriter, maybe the requisites are different for that point. I don't know, but as a middle class screenwriter, I mean, you can do it from anywhere in the world.
Yes.
If you do move, we will have more networking opportunities, and of course, it's better. But my advice would be, don't move until you have a certain level of skill. I mean, in order to write one good screenplay, first you need to write like 20 bad ones, or 15 or 10. It depends on the writer. But getting those bad specs out of your system, it takes time. So that's more important than moving to LA. I mean, because sometimes I hear of writers that they are starting out and they move and they go to LA, and maybe in LA everything's more expensive than their hometown, and so they need to get a job that they work more hours and they are spending less time writing. So yeah, that's my advice. I mean, if you can do it and you want to do it, it's an advantage, not a requisite. But first, be sure to get to that point where you have a minimum level of skill and experience.
Right. Thank you so much for answering all those questions, but I have one more thing for you.
Okay.
Would you like to play a quick round of Raindrops?
What's that?
Raindrops is a fast-paced Q&A with questions only a writer can answer, and you have a minute to answer 15 questions.
Okay, I can play on one condition. If I suck, you promise to edit it out.
Okay, it's a deal. Okay, I'm going to set the timer. When writing, music on or off?
On.
If you're reading a hard copy of a script, one Brad or two?
I don't care.
Whiteboard or legal pad?
None of them.
Favorite snack while writing?
Coffee.
Do you come up with a script title at the beginning or the end?
Whenever I can.
Writing at home, PJs, sweats, or clothes?
PJs.
How do you choose the name of a character?
I don't know. It's very
Research or
hard.
wing it?
Research.
Looking for the right word, you go to the thesaurus or go to bed and wait for the word to come to you?
I wait for it to come to me.
Writer's block, real or fake?
Fake.
Favorite time to write, day or night?
Whenever I can.
You did great. You did
I
so good.
I made it. Oh, cool.
No, well, you didn't make it all the way, but you got real
Okay.
close. You got
Oh,
12 questions. So that's great.
I was missing 3. Okay.
Very good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you spending this time with us. And there's so much creativity in the world, and we're so lucky that we
I'm
can all be a part of it.
I'm so lucky that Hollywood is making my crazy thoughts and dreams. I'm the lucky one, really. But thank you for having me.
That's a wrap for the Writers Hangout. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, like, and thrive. Till we get to hang out again, keep writing. The world needs your stories. The Writers Hangout is sponsored by the Page International Screenwriting Awards. Executive producer, Kristen O'Verne. Producers, Terry Sampson and Sandy Adamitis. Music by Ethan Stoller.